All right, here we are. Fantasy football now. Another day in the books as far as we get closer to the regular season for the NFL. And we are on Fantasy Stream Sports, powered by DSP Media. I'm Jeff Thidoff. Tito, they call me. At That Happens on X. There we go. X. Whatever, yeah, there we go. He did the simpler way because he's smarter than me. Chad Rink. Follow him on X at Chad Ochorinco. I noticed, too, by the way, Chad, that they when you go to hit retweet something, it's not retweet anymore. It's repost.
Repost, yeah.
So it's all changed.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is I think he's trying to make this now a platform eventually where you can do like everything, like banking, all sorts of stuff. Like my brother did what's called a space on it, where you can kind of give a TED talk on it because he's going to talk about.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting. He's a libertarian, and so he has a story. He's got
strong libertarian.
Strong, like he wrote
strong.
He's wrote 2 books on Ron Paul. So
yeah,
I'm not going to get into politics here, but the story he's going to tell is the time he lives in Austin, Texas. So honestly, this is it. He and I live totally different lives. He drove Kanye West to the Alex Jones show a couple years ago. Like, it's insane. Like I've heard bits and pieces. I'm interested to hear the story. And they stopped by. He had to stop like a Walmart or something to get supplies for Kanye. So it's going to be a whole platform. That's why he changed the name.
We're going to dive into tight ends today, and because they can make or break your season. In some cases, they more like they can make your season than break your season. But we're going to talk about them. News came out today, and we knew that Bryce Young was going to be the number one guy. It was already announced for Frank Reich in Carolina. But Frank Reich talked about he's going to play in this first preseason game. And I started wondering, how much does it matter? How much do you think he should play? You know, how much will CJ Stroud play? Because we got a full slate of preseason games starting Thursday through Sunday. I think it is. I don't think the game's Monday. I think it's Thursday through Sunday. But anyway, so opportunities for Bryce Young, for CJ Stroud, for Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. And how much do you think we will see? How much do you think they should play?
It's hard with rookies because they're supposed to be your future, but a lot of these guys, you want to kind of see what they have, and you want to give them the reps. Yep. So I think first preseason game, probably a quarter at least for these guys. I think like most of the veterans, you're going to see like this first preseason 1, maybe 2 drives, and they're out. I think these rookies could play a quarter early on, and then once you get the third one, they'll probably play half. But I think they want to see what they have.
Right.
I think it's going to be weird because I think if like Stroud or Young or Richardson come out and their first drive looks really, really good, maybe they pull them or their second drive. I think they wanted them to end on a high note.
Sure.
And then, especially early on, because you don't want these guys to get hurt either. But again, I don't think it's much, and I don't think it really matters in redraft because you really only want these guys in dynasties, and then maybe later in the year for DFS.
They'll go Costanza. Go out on a high note. I love that.
Exactly.
I think that. I'm curious what they're going to do. And then I look like going beyond that. I start thinking about Seattle's playing. JSN's got an injury history. We're like in the Jets-Browns Hall of Fame game. You saw all the studs on the sideline. They weren't going to play. They were in regular clothing and all of that. They weren't going to do it. Regular by NFL standards, not regular by you and I standards. Regular by their standards. And I wonder how much a JSN might play for Seattle, or how much Jordan Addison's going to play for Minnesota. And the injury thing is a huge factor, and that's why I wonder how much we're going to see of these guys as we get into the preseason.
Yeah, I think running backs are probably not going to get a lot. Like if they're like the marquee guy, like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, those guys are probably not going to play a whole lot. Receiver-wise, I think it's going to be more team by team. I think JSN could see some time because he's their wide receiver 3. So you figure Metcalf, Lockett are probably not going to see a whole lot of time. So they'll probably throw JSN out there a little bit, at least if Geno Smith to kind of get them some reps. So he'll probably be out there as long as Geno's out there, and then he'll probably come off it that way. Same with Quentin Johnston. So again, I think it's really for fantasy-wise, you're just looking, how do these guys look against like real NFL players, but then always look at it like, were they against the second string or third string? Because that's always going to be, because JSN or someone like that's going to kill a third string defense. So again, it's just the only thing you want to look, like you talked about it before, for injuries,
Yeah.
and then maybe depth chart things like, oh, I didn't realize that guy was going be the number. Like if Devin Singletary comes out as the RB1 in Houston, which I don't think it will happen, but that could be telling.
Right. I am going to trick myself into believing rookies will play a lot, so I can, I'm going to go into a game thinking, oh yeah, JSN is going to play quite a bit. I definitely want to watch this game or whatever. I really want to watch. I'm going to talk myself into it, but I don't think they will play as much as I tell myself they will play, if that makes sense, just so I can make an excuse to watch a game in its entirety. Because I watched that Browns-Jets game way too much for a Hall of Fame game. All right, let's dive into the tight ends now. And we know that there is one that just is like, it's one, and then it's like 2. So, number one we know is Kelce in a PPR league. And at some point, Kelce's got to slow down a little bit, or the Chiefs have got to find other. At some point, it's going to end, or at least slow down. I don't think this is the year. I think Kelce is still going to be. He outscored number 2 last year by 100 points or some crazy number as far as scoring goes with tight ends. I would not be surprised if that was the same case again this year.
Yeah, I'm with you because they don't have a real number 1 receiver. And tight ends are, if you got a good tight end, it's not like, you've got Tyreek Hill where you can just double coverage him, put a corner on and have a safety slide over.
Right.
Most of the time you've got linebackers covering a tight end or an undersized cornerback. So they can manhandle either one. And that offense goes through Kelce. And he's such a PPR machine. And they're going to move the ball. So as long as he stays healthy, he is number 1. He should be drafted in the first round. I have a hard time doing it, especially in the first half of the first round. If he's in the second half, that not a big deal. But yeah, he is by far number 1, no question. And then I think it's a pretty significant drop to number 2, and then I think it's another big significant drop to the rest of them.
Okay, so number 2, then you've got. I assume you've got the guy in Baltimore, Andrews, right?
Yeah, and you got to think he was. I think it was 2 years ago. He was the number 1 tight end in Tennessee. So, and he's in the same situation where they don't have a number 1 receiver. I think they're going to throw the ball more. He might have closed the gap last year, but he missed some time, and then Isaiah Likely stepped in and performed well. But Andrews is another PPR machine. He's a lot younger. The offense is not quite as pass heavy as the Chiefs, so that's why he's, I think, 2. But you're still having to draft him in the mid to late second, so it's not like you can get him in the 3rd or 4th. So you're still doing a lot of draft capital for him, and there's a lot of guys in that range I just like better than using it on a tight end, even on one like Mark Andrews, who's really, really good.
I'm okay taking Kelce, but I think for where Andrews goes, I'm with you. I don't think I want to take him at where he's projected to go. I want to let somebody else take him because after Kelce, and I'm including Andrews in this, there's a lot of question marks for a lot of reasons. And we'll talk about some of these guys too now. So after we got the Kelce, then Andrews, you've got a collection of guys that could be the next ones off the board, right? Yeah,
and I think if you're not taking Kelce or Andrews, then you're just kind of looking for who's a guy that I can get good value for that will end up as a top 5 tight end. There's always seems to be 1 or 2 each year that just kind of slides in. And I think these guys kind of fit that bill. You've got TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, George Kittle, Darren Waller. And I threw Goddard in there just because of that offense, but he's probably a little bit down than the rest of them. And they all have pros and cons with each of them in all their situations.
So Hawkinson now in Minnesota after getting traded from Detroit over to there. And I loved Hawkinson early on in his career. He's a guy I liked in dynasty leagues as far as grabbing as a tight end. And now he goes to Minnesota. Thielen's gone. They're going to throw the ball a lot. Still have Addison there. But Hawkinson could get opportunities there. Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. God, I don't know what to do there. With Desmond Ridder, and you got Bijan Robinson now. You wonder if they're going to run the ball every single friggin' play of the game. And then, Ridder goes 5 for 7, and that's it. But they've got so Pitts you're not sure about. Kittle in San Francisco. So many weapons there. Darren Waller getting traded to the Jets. Who the hell knows about – or traded to the Giants, I'm sorry. But who the hell knows with Darren Waller? And then Goddard, too, in Philadelphia. They've added some other weapons on offense. I know they lost some as well, but they've added some. But those guys, if I'm forced to take, you tell me I got to take one of those guys as my number 1 tight end, I think I'm going Pitts.
Yeah, Pitts is the most dynamic, and I just, if they would use him properly and if he had a better quarterback. Like they used him like blocking too much. Like you didn't draft Kyle Pitts that high to block. He's not a great blocker. He's not George Kittle. So he's got the most talent, and I think the most upside because he can just have electric games. I would probably go Hawkinson just because you lose Dalvin Cook. They may throw the ball even more. They lost Thielen, he was that safety blanket. So I think Hawkinson's going to get peppered with a lot of targets. He's a great goal line target. I would probably go Hawkinson as much as I do like Pitts' talent.
Right.
But I think those two are the next two I would take off the board. And then it's probably George Kittle, just because that offense is good. He and Purdy really seem to kind of gel. And if they would just use him, and I know they're trying to win football games. They don't really care about the stats. But George Kittle may just be the most complete tight end out there. He's so good as a receiver, but you don't know it all the time because he's usually blocking, and then he'll explode for a 12, 180 and 2 touchdown game.
All right, let's play the State Fair game. George Kittle walks up to you, and you got to guess his age within 2 years, or he's going to walk away with a stuffed animal. What will you guess George Kittle's age is?
All right, so I think he's probably older than you think because I think he probably did 4 years in college, which will probably put him as he left like around, I would say, let's say 23. He seems to be in the league. I think he's probably 28 and 7 months. I have no idea.
Okay, you would have won. Kittle does not get the stuffed animal. Then he cannot pick the Pikachu up there. He is 29 years old. He will be 30 on October 9th. But it feels like he's been around forever.
Yeah, but then it seems like he might be younger. So it just if you'd have told me he was 32 or you told me he was 25, I'd have been like, okay.
I'm with you. I know. Same way. I'm like, I would not have. I don't know what I would have guessed for Kittle's age. I had to look it up while you were talking because I did not want to be the one to put the number out there.
I just had to do, okay, he probably did 4 years, so he was probably 22, 23, and then it seems like he's been in the league probably 5 years, so that's kind of where I was going. And then, like, Waller's older, too. Waller is probably close to 30 because he started late, and I think it seems like he's like 28 to 30 also.
And he had the obviously substance use problem and things where he stepped away for a while. He is 30. Yeah. He will be 31 on November 20th.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the wear and tear like everybody else. And I think he's, you got to take the preseason, camp stuff with a grain of salt. But he seems like he's looking really good, has a good connection with Jones, and he's talented. So, and they don't really have a number one receiver in New York there.
Right.
So, they got everything else, play action. It's just, I think Jones might take off more. Waller's probably going to be a high touchdown guy once they get in the red zone. But him and both Goddard, Goddard's in a great offense, but he's probably the 5th option.
Yeah.
Behind.
Which is,
Yeah, because you got Hurts, you got the running back, and you got Brown and Smith. So, Goddard's going to be one of those guys. He'll probably sneak in the top 5 because he'll have like 14 2-yard touchdowns this year.
I believe, and now I'm saying this off the top of my head, but I think I'm right, that the 2 most polarizing fantasy teams, as far as fantasy relevance goes, what's going to happen in fantasy football, the 2 most polarizing teams are the Jets and Giants. Because you know what's going to happen with Rodgers, Breece Hall, you've got the offensive line there, all these different questions about the Jets. The Giants, same way. Is Daniel Jones for real? They added Paris Campbell to that team as well. Saquon Barkley's in there, maybe not totally happy based on what his number is. And you've got Waller there. But those 2 teams, the players on those 2 teams, might be the ones that have the most interesting impact on fantasy football drafts and the season this year.
They do, but I think the thing is I don't think either of those teams are going to be in the top half of points scored this year. So that's the big thing. So I think the Jets and Giants are both kind of built the same. Like let's shorten the game, let's win it with our defense, and just not turn the ball over, and let's win like 20-14 or something. So, and I think it's going to go through Barkley with the Jets or the Giants. And I think the Giants, I think, are still going to just run the ball, and I think, and it's going to be Wilson, and that's it. So I don't like a lot of options there, and Waller is one of them I do like. It's Barkley and Waller, and with the Jets, it would just be, I think, Wilson and then Paul, and if they add
Lazard, they added to the team, and that,
no.
All right, so now let's say that all these guys we've talked about are gone. All of them are gone. And you've decided to wait as long as possible to take a tight end. Who do you like after those guys we've mentioned?
There's a couple guys like Freiermuth looked pretty good. If that Steelers team takes him a jump, but he's still like the third or fourth option there. Evan Ingram's interesting because if the Jags, if you're taking Evan Ingram, you are assuming that the Jags take that next step up and can kind of be up there top 12 scoring. They're going to move the ball. So those two, and then I just wait.
Yeah.
Because you got Dolchik, who looked good last year. Mm-hmm. If that offense decides to, take a step in the right direction with Sean Payton there, he's a good option. You got a guy like Cole Kmet's interesting. I don't think they're going to throw the ball enough, but I do like him. I think he's a good tight end. It's just really, I think if you don't get Andrews or Kelsey, and then Pitts, Kittle, Hockenson, just wait, because you can get most of these tight ends super late.
So you get to the point where, and when you talk about the Ingram, Freiermuth, even like Njoku, so you start looking at situations where will the team be in the red zone a lot? Because that's where you're not going to make money on receptions. You're going to make money on touchdowns. Evan Ingram last year had 73 catches, 766 yards, 4 touchdowns, career highs, receptions, and yards. In weeks 14 through 16, Ingram was 26 catches, 337, 2 touchdowns. And then the next 2 weeks just had 5 catches, 43 yards. And in 5 games last year, he had just 1 catch. So these are the guys you're going to look at. They're going to be very much hit and miss. And if they're your number one tight end, you've got to be prepared for that. Freiermuth, he had 63 catches, 732 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 19 more targets for 235 more yards than he had the previous year. Yards per catch jumped from 8.3 to 11.6, but touchdowns dropped 7-2. But if you believe in Pickett and the Steelers offense, if you believe they're going to have more red zone opportunities, that would lead you to think that you might value, Freiermuth a little more. But it'll be interesting to see like other guys like that. Even Njoku, I put some stats down about him. He missed 3 games last year, but he still had career highs in receptions and yards, tied his career high in touchdowns with 4. Fourth time in 7 seasons he's had 4 touchdowns. In 5 AFC North games last year, he missed 1. He had 30 catches, 299, and 3 touchdowns. So if you get him, plan on scoring in an AFC North game. Kmet's another guy that I've seen people talk about the fact that he could be the next great tight end, but it's all based on, do you believe the Bears will have more red zone opportunities this year?
Yeah, and if they do, Fields could take off running. They still like to run the ball there, but I think Kmet is the guy at the goal line, because DJ Moore's not really a goal line guy. Darnell Mooney's not a goal line guy. I don't think Claypool's gonna be much there. So Kmet is one of the guys, but touchdowns are so fluky though too.
Yeah.
And I tell you another guy that I kind of like that's kind of sneaky because the offense is good is Gerald Everett is now with the Chargers. Mm-hmm. So especially if Allen or Williams goes down, Everett could They will. Everett could be sneaky because you can get him I think even later than most of these other guys. So I think if you're doing a tight end, just punting tight end, you want to get a guy that, like you said, a red zone target, but a team that throws the ball a lot. And like Dallas is one of those teams too, where their tight ends have actually been pretty good over the last several years.
So I looked at the numbers on Everett. Last year he had 58 for 555, 4 touchdowns, career high targets, career high receptions, career high yards, tied career high in touchdowns. And now you've got Kellen Moore there, who comes over from Dallas to be the OC over there. And I looked at the numbers for tight ends under Kellen Moore. In 2019, Witten's last year, tight ends got 126 targets as a group, 7 touchdowns. 2020 went down, 105 targets, 4 touchdowns. 21 and 22 are very similar. 130 targets in each one of those years, 11 touchdowns in 21, 9 in 22. So, you try to look at the trends of what the OC brings in. It feels like Everett's got a chance to have a decent year this year, in the red zone especially. The dude's good. It's just if they get enough red zone opportunities, I think Everett can be a sneaky sleeper pick.
I do too. And the only problem is like Williams is kind of red zone target. But the good news is and I don't know if with Kellen Moore calling the play is going to be different, but Staley, the coach for the Chargers, he loves going forward on fourth down. So when they get down there, they're not going to settle for field goals. They're going to go for it, which helps out any skill player on teams like that because they're going to get more opportunities in the long run.
So I want to talk about this guy, and he's a polarizing figure. Not his fault, but he signed a weird contract with the Saints where he'd make, a little bit of money if he's a tight end, but if he's the quarterback, he makes a ton of money, and he's not the quarterback. Taysom Hill. So Taysom Hill last year caught 9 passes as a tight end, 9 passes for 77 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was a top 10 tight end, though, because if you have him classified as a tight end in your league, he had 96 rushes for 575 and 7 touchdowns. The last 3 years, Taysom Hill, 21 catches. It's all he's had 3 years. Tight end, 21 catches, 227, 3 touchdowns. He's rushed 253 times, 1,406 yards, 20 touchdowns. Every 12 times he's touched the ball the last 3 years, he has scored a touchdown. Now, it's different this year. Kamara's out, I know. But you've got, obviously, a different running back group in the room, a different quarterback in the room. Is Taysom Hill, do you think he'll be a top 10 tight end this year? You've got Williams there to run the ball in from short distance. Do you think that Taysom Hill is going to be a top tight end this year when it's all said and done, points-wise for him?
Probably not because Derek Carr's there. I think they used Hill as a quarterback because of who they had there with James Winston and that kind of thing. So I think they kind of like, hey, let's just throw him in to mix things up. And so that's where he got a lot of his running. I don't think he really lined up in the backfield much. So, and he's never lined, like you said, he's never lining up really at tight end. So most of the production came from the quarterback spot, just running the ball. So, and I think most leagues probably have him as a tight end. So, I would take a chance on him this year just because Derek Carr's there. I don't think they're going to be running those kind of weird, fancy kind of plays with Hill a lot. They still will, because if you got a guy like him paying him money, you might as well use him. But who knows though? He could be red zone packages, inside the 5. Maybe he does because he ends up rushing 10 touchdowns this year.
And it's easy for him to jump back up there. You look, like I say, he's caught 21 passes in 3 years. He caught 9 last year, and he was a top 8 tight end. He's in the top 10 for sure, based on your scoring system as far as tight end position. So, by the way, look at where he's classified in your league. I'm with you. I think he falls off dramatically this year. I think he is probably closer to 20 than he is to 10 at the end of the season. And because of the fact you've got a competent quarterback in there, you've got a goal line back in there who you can trust. And I know Kamara's out 3 games. Maybe Hill has more of an impact early on, but it's not going to be like that this season. I don't think he will be near the top 10.
No, and it's just a good point where if you don't get Kelsey or Andrews, most of these other guys, if they crack the top 5, it's because of touchdowns.
Yeah.
Unless they can unlock Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is the only other guy I would be like, you know what? This guy could get 80 receptions and, have 600+ yard games. He's the one that if they can unlock him, I don't know if Desmond Ridder is able to, but he's the guy I would maybe take a chance on because he has that upside if they can get him and use him correctly. Other than that, you're just banking on touchdowns, so you might as well take tight ends on teams that are just going to score a lot.
If you're looking for help with your drafts, fantasydraftproxies.com. You can go there, fantasydraftproxies.com, and you can have somebody help you do the draft for you, maybe even run your team during the season. Go there and check it out. Chad and I are both involved with that, so go there and look at that. If there's something you need, want help, assistance, or also follow us on Twitter. We'll answer your questions. I'm sorry, X. I'll do the fingers this time because that's easier. X. Follow us on there. Again, he's at Chad Ochocinco. I'm at It Happens. Now, last time, Chad, we were here, and you. I don't want to say. I don't want to dramatize it. You went off though on some fantasy experts, and I'm curious now. What is on your mind today that we should bring up for fantasy football? Possibly, guys looking to draft this year and what's going on.
Okay. One thing I think about, I think we should have more fantasy, fight wars, like an Anchorman, just get all these guys to show up in a parking lot and see what happens. We would not fare well probably because
no, you and I would no.
So, but what's on my mind, I just did a draft today with 2 of my kids, a bunch of their friends, and then a couple adults from church. So, and it was funny because you got, they're getting sniped because, one guy was a Seahawks fan. So anytime a Seahawks guy was getting sniped, they all the kids know each other. So they knew who they liked. So they would be just would snipe guys. So on my mind was there any time with you, I have 3 where in a draft you got sniped and it was not just like, oh, I really wanted that guy, but it was really kind of personal or just it really something that really stuck out with you in any draft?
Yeah, there was one season, and this was obviously when I throw the name out there, it's going to tell you how far back it was. But so I was doing Fan Sports. It wasn't even Fan Sports Sunday. What was it called? It was called Sunday Brunch on the Fan, on 97.1 The Fan here in Columbus. And I was working with D. Miller.
Okay, yeah.
And D. Miller, former Buckeye great, played also in the NFL for a hot moment.
State Farm agent right now.
Yes, State Farm agent. And so I'm talking to D. Miller before the season. And we're off the air, and he and I are talking. And he tells me, and this is before the guy broke out, he tells me this. He says, one guy I really like in Pittsburgh, I think Antonio Brown's going to blow up. I'm like, really? He said, yeah. So I've got Antonio Brown on my mind. And I didn't think anybody I was drafting against had Antonio Brown on their radar. And sure enough, in the round I'm going to take Antonio Brown, 2 picks ahead of me, somebody grabbed Antonio Brown, and he went off to greatness before he went to craziness. But to bring it back to Kanye West, I guess. But before he went Kanye, he was such a great receiver for a few years there in Pittsburgh. And I had insider info, like I had a former receiver telling me, take this guy.
Right.
And I just waited 1 round too late to get him. And threw me on tilt, by the way. Threw me on tilt.
Yeah.
It screwed me up.
It usually does, yeah, if you're ready for that guy.
Yeah.
I have 3 because they're personal. They're going to be really quick. One was last year. My love of kickers, especially Rodrigo Blankenship. I have had him in every league that you could ever draft a kicker. Yes. I wasn't at the draft last year because I was putting up a fence. And Aaron Portzline drafts him as like the 3rd or 5th kicker off the board. And we have to have 3 kickers in this league. So it's not like one. You have to have 3. So, yeah. But it was just way too early for someone to draft Rodrigo Blankenship if it wasn't me. So he was just doing it, I think, because he was just trying to bust my chops. So he wasn't there. Yeah, exactly. So that hurt me. You go back to Randy Moss. Moss, his last year in Marshall, I loved him like so much. Right. So I loved him so much that the year he was still in college, I drafted him as my last pick. I'm like, listen, I know I'm going to keep him on my roster. I'm not going to get any stats, but I'm just doing this because next year I said, hey, I got him. You guys know I want him. Next year, his rookie year, 7th round, I was going to draft him. Like I could probably get him next round because everyone knows I want him.
Sure.
So I take stupid Keenan McCardle and his 2 touchdowns that year or whatever. And then my best friend who knew my love of Randy Moss more than anybody else takes Randy Moss for me. I was livid. I was livid. Yeah. Well, no, he's still my best friend. And then the best one. So this is probably freshman, sophomore year of high school. So like 85, 86, maybe 87 year. I was at my buddy's, the same guy, Dave, at his house. And back in the day, you could buy the little boxes of cereal in packages like Post, General Mills, and Kellogg. You could buy like boxes 8 to 10. We thought it'd be fun.
You can still do it.
You can't. It's hard to find them somewhere. You got to probably go to Costco or something. But we thought it'd be fun one night when I was spending the night if we went, got those, and had a cereal draft. So we have like 30 of these little boxes because you can eat them. That's the beauty of it. So we have 30 cereals on his kitchen table. I'm picking first. Right. I cannot believe we're still friends after this. So the way Post packaged it was there was 1 Fruity Pebble, but they had 2 Cocoa Pebbles.
Right.
So being smart, I'm like, okay, and I love Cocoa Pebbles and Fruity Pebbles. Who doesn't? So I'm like, okay, I got the first pick. It's just me and him. I'm taking Fruity Pebbles, and then I'll just get Cocoa Pebbles
later on.
I'll just get it at the second pick because he'll take 1 and then he'll go get honeycombs probably because he loves honeycombs. Right. So I take Fruity Pebbles, getting all excited. He goes Cocoa Pebbles twice, and I'm like, what are you like? Why? Why would you do that? You already have it. Why? He goes, that way I could have a giant bowl. And it was at that moment that I realized how much of a genius Dave was. So to this day,
that's smart.
It was smart, but it was one of the greatest drafts ever because it was just cereal.
Cereal drafts are so much fun. I love doing them all the time. It brings me back to my youth and when I would wake up in the morning and I would get a big bowl before everyone else got up, and I'd put by a bowl, I mean a cereal bowl. I'm sorry. I gotta make sure. I got this big bowl, 8 years old, 7 years old, 6 years old, and I'd watch Scooby. Yes, watch Scooby-Doo, and the Super Friends, and I would just sit there and inhale a box of Fruit Loops or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was fun. So, all right, we're not doing kickers. We'll do a segment maybe on strategy, but next time though, by the time we meet again, we talk about this. We'll see what else going on in camps, any injuries, any updates on Jonathan Taylor, what's going on with him. And if Zeke Elliott, if he signs somewhere, Dalvin Cook, we'll do all that. Get you updated on the latest news and notes, give you more strategy advice. Follow him on X at Chad Ochocinco. I'm at It Happens. Rank, it was a lot of fun, bud. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good.